Hey friends, it's your girl Mia. This is Mia Horror Stories. And tonight's story, I thought I lived alone, until I heard laughter in the ceiling is told in darkness. The screen will stay black, so you can simply listen, imagine, and feel every moment without distraction. Trust me, the build-up matters, and the ending is where the real chill hides. So don't look away, and don't leave early. The first time I heard it, I didn't even stop stirring my pasta. It was thin, like a sound that had to squeeze through something. A quick burst, two people, maybe, or one person trying not to laugh too loud. A little inhale. Then the laugh again, clipped off mid-note, as if someone pressed a hand over a mouth. My fork paused in the air. Sauce clung to the tines and slid back into the pot with a wet sound. I stood there in my sock feet in my kitchen, staring up at the ceiling like the ceiling had done something wrong. In an old building, you hear things. Pipes that tick when they cool. Radiators that ping. The elevator cables humming at night. Footsteps that aren't yours because sound doesn't respect leases. I'd made peace with all of that. This wasn't a pipe. I turned the burner down and listened harder, the way you do when you want your brain to behave and stop making stories. The apartment smelled like garlic and dish soap, and the citrus cleaner I'd used on the counters earlier. My phone sat face down by the cutting board, buzzing faintly every few seconds, because my mother liked to send messages in flurries instead of sentences. Nothing. I exhaled, a little annoyed at myself. I was alone. I lived alone. That was the point. That was why I'd picked a one-bedroom at the top of the building, why I'd paid extra for top floor like it was a charm. I leaned over the pot to taste the sauce, burned the tip of my tongue, swore softly, and turned toward the sink. That's when it happened again. Not loud. Not a scream, not something theatrical. Just laughter, quick and bright, coming from somewhere it shouldn't, from above me. I set the spoon down carefully, like I didn't trust my hands. The sound faded into a scuff, someone shifting weight, maybe, and then into the normal apartment noises. The refrigerator fan, a car going by on the street below, the faint thump of my neighbor's music through a shared wall. I reached up and pressed my palm to the ceiling. Cool drywall, smooth paint, nothing that could hold a person. My name is Mara Klein. I'm 32. I moved to Portland, Oregon 2 years ago because I'd run out of polite ways to tell people in Chicago that I didn't want to go to another wedding, another baby shower, another night out that ended with everyone shouting over each other in a bar that smelled like sweet beer and desperation. Portland had seemed like a place where you could disappear without it being a tragedy. I rented a unit in a brick building in Goose Hollow, close enough to downtown that I could bike to work, old enough that no one expected the lobby to smell like money. The listing said charming, which meant crooked floors and radiators that screamed in winter. It also meant thick walls and a view of trees, and I liked that. I work at an insurance office near Pioneer Square doing claims processing, dry work, with a steady paycheck and fluorescent lighting that makes everyone's skin look slightly green. I'm not proud of it, but I'm not ashamed either. It's a job that doesn't follow me home. Home, for me, has rules. Shoes off at the door. Keys always hung on the hook. Dishes rinsed before bed. Deadbolt the minute I'm inside. It's a system. Systems are how I deal with the part of my brain that likes to imagine worst-case scenarios. It isn't dramatic. It's just persistent. A private flaw I don't advertise because it sounds like a personality trait on a bad date. I'm anxious. It's not I get nervous before presentations. It's I can't sleep if I don't check the stove twice. It's I watch the news and my chest tightens like a drawstring bag. I'd been getting better. Therapy had helped. Medication too, at least enough to take the edge off the constant scanning. Still, when I heard laughter in the ceiling, my mind did what it always did. It reached for the story that would keep me alive. A person. I hated myself for it, even as I walked to the living room and picked up my phone. The screen lit my face. 7:46 p.m. Tuesday. I opened the building's group, chat 1630 SW 18th residence, and stared at the blank message field. My thumb hovered. What was I going to type? Hey, does anyone else have a secret attic roommate? No. I backed out and opened my contacts instead. My upstairs neighbor didn't exist top floor. That was the selling point. So the next best thing was my across the hall neighbor, the only person I'd spoken to more than twice since moving in. His contact was saved as Ben 4B, because I am a terrible adult in some specific ways. I hit call before I could overthink it. He picked up on the third ring, voice muffled like he was chewing. Mara. Hey, I said, trying to sound normal. Sorry, are you home? A pause, swallow. Yeah, why? Did you? I stopped because the sentence sounded ridiculous. Do you ever hear people like above us? He didn't answer right away, which made my stomach tighten. Then he laughed, a single burst. You mean the building? The building makes noises. The pipes. No, I said too quickly. Not pipes. Another pause. I heard something shift on his end, maybe him standing up or moving away from the TV. What did you hear? That's the thing. It sounded like laughter, a beat, and then laughter. I stared up at my own ceiling as if it might respond. Yeah. He was quiet long enough that I pulled the phone away and checked I hadn't lost signal. Then he said, okay, that's weird. The fact that he didn't immediately dismiss it made my skin prickle. Can you come over for a second? I asked, and hated how small my voice sounded. Sure, he said, give me a minute. When I ended the call, the apartment felt different, like I'd admitted something to myself, and now it was in the air. I turned off the burner in the kitchen. The sauce could wait. I walked through my rooms in a slow loop, like moving would make me calmer. My one bedroom wasn't anything special. A couch that had survived 2 moves, a bookshelf with uneven stacks, a plant I kept half alive out of spite. The windows were old and a little drafty. Outside, the streetlights were just starting to glow, and the rain had that fine misty look it gets in Portland, enough to make the pavement shine, but not enough to justify an umbrella. I listened. Nothing. No laughter. No footsteps. Just the steady, innocent noises of a building settling into evening. My phone buzzed again, my mother. Did you ever call the plumber about that sink? I didn't respond. There was a knock at my door, brisk and familiar. I opened it to Ben Hosser, 41. Male stood in the hallway in a flannel shirt and jeans like he'd dressed for the weather even indoors. He had a kind face in a tired way, with light stubble and eyes that looked like they'd spent years learning how to be patient. He held a paper towel in one hand, as if he'd been mid-dinner and didn't want to touch my doorknob with sauce fingers. He glanced past me into my apartment, not nosy, more like checking the vibe. You okay? I think so, I said. Can you come in? Tell me if I'm losing it. He stepped inside and stood where the entryway opened into my living room, hands slightly raised, making a show of being harmless. You're not losing it. Buildings are just weird. I shut the door behind him and locked it without thinking. The deadbolt made a thick, satisfying click. Ben's eyes flicked to my hand on the lock. He didn't comment. "Where were you when you heard it?" he asked. "In the kitchen," I said, "over the stove." He followed me in, shoes still on because we were both pretending this was casual and temporary. The kitchen light was harsh, making the counters look too clean, too exposed. I pointed up. It was right there, like directly above. Ben stood under the spot and tilted his head. He didn't smile. He listened with his whole body jaw set, like he was trying to pick up vibration through his teeth. We waited. A minute passed. 2. The silence wasn't dramatic. It was just empty. The kind of empty you notice when you're trying to fill it. Ben cleared his throat. Could it be outside? Like someone on the roof? Kids? "There aren't kids here," I said, then immediately regretted how confident it sounded. "I mean, this building is mostly adults." "People's friends come over," he said. "On the roof?" I asked. He looked up again. "There's access somewhere, maybe maintenance." "Maintenance doesn't laugh," I said, and heard myself and forced a breath. "Sorry, that's not I'm being weird. You're being human," he said, and that was the thing about him. He didn't exaggerate comfort. He made it feel like a fact. I swallowed and admitted the part I hadn't wanted to say out loud. It sounded close. Not like muffled through walls. Like it was in the ceiling. Like I stopped myself before my brain could build the rest of the sentence. Ben's gaze drifted to the corner of my kitchen where the ceiling met the wall, where a faint hairline crack ran a few inches, something I'd noticed before and filed under old building stuff. He stepped closer, raised his phone flashlight, and aimed it at the line. The crack looked the same as it always had. Thin, dry, harmless. Ben lowered his phone. "There's no attic up there," he said, but the way he said it wasn't confident. It was a statement he wanted to be true. "I know," I said. "That's why this is stupid." He walked to the hallway and glanced up at the smoke detector, then back at me. "You got a step stool." "In the closet," I said. He brought it out and set it under the detector, climbed up carefully, and checked that it was secure, like this was a normal, neighborly errand. He twisted the detector a little, peered at the edge where it met the ceiling. "Nothing," he said. He climbed down, slower than he'd climbed up, and then stood there, hands on hips. We looked at each other. I could feel my pulse in my throat. The apartment was too warm from cooking. The air smelled faintly metallic now, like the stove had cooled and released something. Ben said, "Okay, so, options." "Options," I echoed. "We can ignore it," he said. "Call it a weird sound. You eat your pasta. I go back to my place and pretend I didn't just inspect your smoke detector like a maniac." I tried to smile. It came out crooked. "Or," he continued, "we can be annoying, responsible adults. We can go down to the basement and check the utility access. See if there's a crawlspace ladder. See if someone's been up there. If there's even a there." "Tonight?" I asked, and my voice betrayed me. I didn't want to go into the basement at night. I didn't want to admit that I didn't want to. I also didn't want to sit in my apartment wondering if I'd imagined the sound. Ben shrugged. "Or tomorrow, in daylight, with the office open. We can talk to the super." I pictured myself trying to sleep with the ceiling above my bed, the dark weight of it, the possibility that I'd hear it again, and have no plan besides lying there with my phone in my hand. My private fear isn't ghosts. It's being stupid. It's being the person who dismisses a small sign until it's too late. The person whose story starts with, "I thought it was nothing." I looked at the ceiling again, at the innocent paint, the clean line of it. Then I looked at Ben. Basement, I said, now, before I talk myself out of it. Ben nodded once, like he'd expected that answer, and reached for the doorknob. Grab a jacket, he said. And Mara, bring your phone. If we're doing this, we do it like adults. I grabbed my raincoat from the hook and slipped my phone into my pocket, fingers tight around it. At the door, I hesitated with my hand on the deadbolt, because leaving meant turning my back on the ceiling. Ben waited without rushing me. Finally, I unlocked the door and stepped into the hallway, letting it click shut behind us. And just as the latch caught, from somewhere above light, quick, unmistakable, there was that laugh again, like someone had heard us make a decision and found it funny. The stairwell smelled like wet concrete and old paint, the kind of smell that lives in the back of your throat. The overhead lights were on motion sensors, so every few steps there was a soft click and a delayed hum as the next one woke up. Ben took the stairs 2 at a time without thinking about it. I followed, more careful, my hand skimming the rail. I don't usually come down here, I said, mostly to hear my own voice. Most people don't, Ben said, which is why it's where problems hide. The basement door was metal and heavier than it needed to be. Ben shoved it open with his shoulder. It protested with a scrape that echoed too much, and then we were in. The basement of our building wasn't a horror movie basement. No dripping chains, no flickering bulbs. It was utilitarian in the way older buildings get when they've been patched and repatched by people who only care that things work. Concrete floor, exposed pipes running like ribs along the ceiling, row of storage cages made from chain link, each tagged with apartment numbers in fading Sharpie. The boiler sat at the far end, a big rounded thing that made the room feel warmer than it should have been. The door closed behind us with a hollow clang. Ben checked his phone. If there's access, it'll be near utilities or the old service stair. They don't build secret doors anymore. People still cut corners, I said, and immediately hated how conspiratorial it sounded. We walked past the storage cages. Someone had a bike chained inside one, its tires slowly deflating over what looked like months. Another cage held a box of Christmas ornaments and a folded artificial tree. Normal lives paused. There was a corkboard by the boiler with notices pinned to it. Fire evacuation map, a handwritten sign about laundry hours, a printed email from management warning residents not to store flammable materials in the basement. At the bottom, a maintenance log in a plastic sleeve. Ben leaned in to read it. They actually keep this updated, he said, sounding impressed. I stepped closer. The last entry was from 3 weeks ago. Roof access inspected, ladder secure, lock replaced, initials underneath. Roof access, I said, Ben murmured. He scanned the wall above the log, then turned and started following the pipes with his eyes. The sound hit us then, not laughter exactly, but a thud, like something being set down with care. It came from above, traveled through the pipes, and settled in my chest. I stopped walking. Did you hear that? Ben froze. He waited a second, then nodded. Yeah, we stood there listening. The boiler ticked. Water moved somewhere far away. The building did what buildings do. It could be someone on the roof, Ben said. Maintenance. Or someone who shouldn't be there, I finished. He didn't argue. We followed the pipes to a narrow alcove, partially hidden behind the boiler. There was a door there, painted the same institutional beige as everything else, with a simple metal handle and a deadbolt that looked newer than the rest. A small sign above it read, "Authorized personnel only." Ben reached for the handle, then stopped. "We should probably," another sound cut him off. This time, it was unmistakable. A laugh, brief and breathy, muffled but human. Close enough that I felt it more than heard it. My phone buzzed in my pocket at the same moment. I flinched hard enough that Ben swore under his breath. I pulled it out. The screen lit up with a notification I'd never seen before. Carbon monoxide detected. Source, living room sensor. Status, active. For a second, my brain refused to process it. Then everything else dropped away. "I have a co-alert," I said. The words came out flat, like I was reading them off a card. In my apartment, Ben's face changed. Not panic focus. "That's time sensitive," he said. "That's not a maybe later thing." "I checked the stove," I said too fast. "I turned it off. The boiler's down here." "It's not. Co doesn't care what you checked," he said gently. "It cares what's leaking." Another thud from above, heavier this time. The pipes vibrated. The laugh came again, sharper, like someone had lost patience. Ben took a breath. "Okay, we have two problems that might be one problem." I stared at the door marked "Authorized personnel only." My private fear that I'd miss the small sign, that I'd be stupid, pressed in on me until it was hard to breathe. "If someone's up there messing with something," I said, "and it's causing a leak, then it's not just you," Ben said. "It's the building." He reached for the door again. "Wait," I said, and grabbed his arm. My hand shook. "Shouldn't we call 911? Or the gas company? Or someone official?" "Yes," he said. "But if there's an active leak and someone is physically there, we also need eyes. We need to know if there's an immediate shutoff. We don't have time to leave and come back." My phone chimed again. "Co-levels rising. Evacuate if possible." The word evacuate made my stomach drop. "Ben, I know," he said. "We check quickly. If anything looks off, we get out and call. Deal." This was the choice. Stay put and wait for authority, or move toward the thing making noise and trust that we could handle what we found. Every part of me wanted to default to procedure, to distance. But the alert on my phone kept pulsing, insistent. "Deal," I said, even as my pulse skidded. Ben twisted the handle. "Locked." "Of course," he muttered. He looked around, scanning the alcove. There was a breaker panel nearby, its metal door hanging slightly open. He flipped it shut out of habit, then paused. "This shouldn't be open." He knelt and shone his phone light along the base of the wall. There were scuff marks there, fresher than the rest of the floor, like something had been dragged. "Someone s been through here," I said. "Yeah," he said. "And recently." The laugh came again, right above us now, closer than before. It sounded annoyed. Ben stood and tested the deadbolt. It rattled but held. "If the ladder S behind this door, there's a ladder?" I asked. "Roof access usually has one," he said. "Fold down." If it's unsecured, a low hum cut through the air, and the lights overhead dimmed, then flared back to life. Somewhere deeper in the building, a door slammed. Hard, my phone chimed a third time. "Co-levels high. Evacuate immediately." "I don't like this," I said, and couldn't keep the edge out of my voice. "I really don't like this." "Me neither," Ben said. He took out his keys and tried one in the deadbolt, more out of desperation than logic. It didn't fit. The hum grew louder. Wheeler let out a sound like a sigh. From above, there was movement, fast now. Footsteps. Running. Then, suddenly, everything went dark. Not a flicker. Not a dim. A hard, total blackout. My phone screen was the only light left, casting a harsh white circle on the concrete. In that small bubble, I could see Ben's face, jaw tight, eyes reflecting back at me. The door behind us, the heavy basement door, made a sound I hadn't heard before. A click. Then the unmistakable scrape of a lock sliding home. Ben turned slowly, flashlight swinging. He tested the door. It didn't budge. "Okay," he said, and for the first time since I'd met him, his voice wavered. "That's new." Above us, someone laughed. Not muffled this time, direct, close. And my phone buzzed again, the alert vibrating against my palm like a heartbeat I couldn't stop. My phone light shook in my hand, not because I couldn't hold it steady, but because my body had started doing things without checking in with my brain first. Ben tried the basement door again, shoulder into it this time. The metal groaned, then settled back into place like it was amused by the effort. "Locked from the outside," he said. "That's deliberate." "Fire code violation," I said automatically. My mouth was dry. "That's illegal. Doesn't help us right now," he said, but he nodded like the words mattered anyway. The laughter above us faded into movement, footsteps crossing something hollow. The sound traveled down the pipes, slid through the boiler casing, and pooled in the concrete floor under my feet. I pulled up the app again. The numbers were red now. I didn't know what the exact threshold was, but I knew red meant now. "We can't stay down here," I said. "If it's leaking, it'll collect low." "Agreed," Ben said. He lifted his phone higher, scanning the basement ceiling. "Second exit. There's the laundry room," I said, past the storage cages. "It connects to the alley stairwell." "Good," he said. "That's attempt 1. We moved fast, not running but not slow. The basement felt different without the lights bigger, warped, like the dark had stretched it. Our phone beams crossed and uncrossed, briefly illuminating chain link shadows that looked like ribs. Halfway there, the laughter came again, closer than before, sharp and breathless. I spun, heart slamming, convinced for one terrible second that someone was right behind us. My light caught movement. I screamed. Just once. Sharp and embarrassing. Then the beam settled, and the movement resolved into something mundane and awful in a different way. A raccoon, half-grown, scrambling along the top of a storage cage. Its eyes flashed white in the light. It hissed, then vanished into a gap near the ceiling. Ben let out a breath that sounded like a laugh he didn't mean to make. "Okay, that one's not human." I pressed my hand to my chest, trying to slow my heart. That's good, right? It explains some noise," he said. "Not all of it." We reached the laundry room door. It was propped open with a brick, like someone had planned on going back and forth. The room smelled like detergent and damp lint. The machines were dark and silent. The alley stairwell door was at the far end. Ben crossed the room and grabbed the handle. Locked. He rattled it harder. Nothing. "Isn't that an exit?" I asked. "It should be," he said. He leaned closer, phone light sweeping over the frame. "They've added a padlock." My stomach dropped. "For what reason?" "People sleeping in the stairwell," he said, "or dumping, or management being cheap." Another alert buzzed on my phone. I didn't look this time. I didn't need to, so attempt 1 fails, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "What's attempt 2? Ben glanced back toward the utility alcove. "Roof access." "That's where the noise is," I said. "Which might be where the shutoff is," he countered. "Or at least ventilation. Co's coming from somewhere. Boilers, furnaces, blocked flues, those are all up and down problems." I thought of the maintenance log. Roof access inspected. Ladder secure. Lock replaced. "And if someone's already there?" I asked. Then we don't surprise them, he said. We announce ourselves. We keep distance. Ben, I know, he said quietly. But we're out of exits. The laughter came again, then stopped abruptly, like someone had heard us talking. We went back the way we came. My legs felt heavier now, like the air itself had thickened. I was starting to feel a pressure behind my eyes, a dull headache blooming. I couldn't tell if it was fear or carbon monoxide or both. At the utility door, Ben tried the deadbolt again. No give. He backed up and scanned the alcove. There's got to be another way up. I followed his light. The pipes overhead disappeared into the ceiling through rough holes, their edges chipped and patched. In one corner, partially hidden behind conduit, was a metal hatch, smaller than a door. Painted over so many times it blended into the wall. Ben reached up and pulled. It didn't budge. Help me, he said. We tugged together. The hatch came loose with a shriek of metal on metal and dropped open far enough to reveal a ladder folded up inside the wall. Roof access. Of course, I muttered, because why would it be straightforward? Ben climbed first, slow and careful. I say get out, you get out, he said. Where? I asked. He paused. Fair point. I followed him up, my phone clenched between my teeth for light. The ladder rattled under our weight. The shaft was narrow, the walls close enough that my shoulders brushed paint flakes loose. The air was warmer here, stale. Halfway up, I smelled it. Not gas, something sharper, exhaust. Ben, I said around the phone. I smell it too, he said. Don't breathe deep. At the top of the ladder was another hatch. This one wasn't locked. It was bent. Ben pushed it open. The roof access room was small and low, with a single emergency light glowing dim red. Ductwork crisscrossed the ceiling. A vent pipe ran up through the roof, its cap missing. And in the corner, hunched over a portable generator the size of a cooler, was a man. He jerked when the hatch opened, scrambling back. He was thin, late 20s maybe, with a hood pulled up and grime streaked across his face. His eyes darted between us and the ladder. Don't, he said, voice cracking. Just don't. The generator sputtered, then roared louder. The exhaust hose attached to it led straight into the vent pipe. My stomach turned. You're pumping fumes into the building, Ben said, slow and loud. You're poisoning people. I needed power, the man snapped. I needed heat. I wasn't. Another laugh burst out of him, wild and sharp, and I realized with a cold clarity that this was the sound. Not joy, not humor, stress leaking out sideways. You locked the basement, I said. Why? They kept coming down, he said. I heard voices, I thought. He stopped himself, breathing hard. I didn't want anyone to take it. Take what? Ben asked. The man gestured vaguely. My spot. Below us, somewhere deep in the building, something clanged. The generator surged. My phone buzzed again. This time, the alert was different. Connection lost. No signal, I said. Ben took a step forward. We're calling this in. You're shutting that off. The man shook his head, backing toward the door that led out onto the roof. I can't. If it shuts off, if it doesn't, people die, Ben said. For a split second, no one moved. Then the man bolted. He slammed through the roof door, the wind yanking it open. Cold air rushed in, a sudden relief that made me dizzy. Ben swore and lunged for the generator, fumbling with the controls. Help me. I grabbed the exhaust hose, yanked it free from the vent. Hot metal burned my palm. Screamed and dropped it, skin already blistering. The generator coughed, sputtered. Below us, the building groaned. Then, with a sound like tearing fabric, the ladder we'd climbed shuddered and gave way. The bottom rung snapped loose from the wall, It crashed down into the darkness below, taking half the ladder with it. Ben and I stared at the gap where our exit had been. Wind howled through the open roof door. The generator roared back to life, and we were no longer trapped in the basement. We were trapped above it. The wind coming through the roof door cut straight through my jacket. It smelled like rain and hot metal, and something sour underneath, like insulation that had been cooked too long. My burned palm throbbed in time with my pulse, a wet, insistent pain that made it hard to think past my own body. Ben slammed his shoulder into the generator's side, knocking it half a foot across the concrete. The exhaust hose rattled loose again. "Kill it," I said. "Just kill it." "I'm trying," he snapped, fingers flying over the controls. The generator coughed, sputtered, then steadied. Too steady. The emergency light flickered overhead. Red, unhelpful. Below us, the open shaft yawned black where the ladder had been. I edged closer and looked down. I couldn't see the bottom, just the faint glow of phone light from somewhere far below, reflecting off metal. "How far?" I asked. "Too far," Ben said without looking. "You'd break something." A gust slammed the roof door shut behind us with a bang that made me jump. For a half-second, I thought the man had come back. Ben froze. I held my breath. Nothing. The door rattled in the wind, then stilled. My phone vibrated weakly in my pocket, like it was trying to be useful without quite managing it. I pulled it out. No bars. Battery down to 12%. "Co-levels?" Ben asked. "Still high," I said. "Slower rise, maybe. Or my phone's lying." "That's not comforting." Another laugh drifted in from somewhere outside. Fainter now, further away. "He's on the roof," I said. "He didn't get far." Ben finally managed to choke the generator down to a sputter. The noise dropped, then surged again like it was offended. He swore and kicked the side panel. It popped loose. "Careful," I said. "I know," he said, breath coming fast. "I know." The wind picked up, whistling through the missing vent cap. Cold air poured down the pipe, pushing exhaust back into the room in erratic bursts. My head swam. "This is making it worse," I said. "Pressure changes." Ben glanced up at the vent, then at me. "We need that door open. We need airflow. And the guy, he's not coming back in here if we block him out." I limped to the roof door and shoved it open again, bracing it with my shoulder. The night exploded around us, dark sky, city lights blurred by mist, the sound of traffic distant and indifferent. The roof was gravel and tar, uneven underfoot, dotted with vents and the low hum of the city. The man was halfway across it, stumbling more than running. He slipped, caught himself, then turned when he saw us. "Don't," he shouted, voice ragged. "You shut it off and they'll find me." "They're already finding you," Ben said, stepping out beside me. "You've poisoned the building." "I didn't mean to," the man said, backing toward the edge. "I just needed somewhere dry." "Somewhere no one would," he laughed again, high and broken. "I didn't think anyone lived up here." I felt something twist in my chest. "I do," I said. "I live right under you." He hesitated. For a second, he looked young. Scared, below us, somewhere in the building, an alarm started wailing. Not my phone this time, the building's. "That's the co-system," Ben said. "Management installed it last year." The man's eyes darted. "I can't go back to a shelter," he said. "I can't. You don't have to go anywhere right now," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. "You just have to stop this." He shook his head. "They'll call the cops." "They're already on their way," Ben said, "because people are in danger." The man's laugh cut off abruptly. He lunged not at us, but at the generator inside the access room. "No," Ben shouted. He tackled the man just inside the doorway. They went down hard, bodies slamming into concrete. The generator lurched, the exhaust hose tearing free completely. A thick cloud rolled out, gray and choking. I gagged, eyes burning. My burned hands screamed when I grabbed the hose again, but I held on this time, teeth clenched, and dragged it toward the open roof door. Ben grunted, struggling with the man, who was stronger than he looked and fueled by something close to panic. They crashed into the wall. The emergency light shattered, plunging the room into darkness broken only by my phone's glow and the city lights outside. "Get it out," Ben yelled. I coughed, hauling the hose over the threshold and kicking it away from the vent pipe. Fresh air rushed in, cold and brutal. The generator sputtered, then finally died. The sudden quiet was loud. For a moment, no one moved. The wind howled. The alarm below kept screaming. The man lay on the floor, chest heaving. Ben sat back on his heels, face gray, eyes unfocused. "You okay?" I asked him. He nodded once. "You?" I looked down at my hand. The skin was angry red, blistered, already swelling. "I'll live." The man started laughing again, softer this time, almost hysterical. "I didn't think anyone would notice," he said. "I didn't think," Ben stood slowly. "You locked people in a basement." "I was scared," the man said, and the words came out small. I heard voices. I thought of my own fear, the way my brain filled silence with stories. I didn't say anything. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Red and blue lights began to paint the low clouds. The man curled in on himself. When the police came up onto the roof, it was messy and procedural and painfully normal. Hands up, cuffs, blankets, questions shouted over wind and alarms. Paramedics took one look at my hand and clucked, wrapping it in cool gauze that stung in a clean, honest way. They put oxygen on both of us. I sucked it in greedily, my head clearing inch by inch. Down below, residents gathered in the street in pajamas and coats, faces lit by emergency lights. I saw my building from above for the first time, and it looked small, fragile. Ben and I sat on the edge of the roof, feet dangling, wrapped in identical silver blankets. The cold seeped through anyway. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, staring at his hands. "I should have called first." "I'm glad you didn't," I said. My voice shook now that it was safe to do so. I wouldn't have gone alone. We sat in silence as the wind tugged at the blankets. When they finally let us go down not through the ladder, but via a fire truck's extended stair, I felt something settle in my bones. Not relief, something heavier. The building would air out. The generator would be gone. The man would face whatever came next. But I knew, with a certainty that scared me more than the laughter had, that every time I stood in my kitchen now, I would look up and listen. They took me to the emergency department in a van that smelled like disinfectant and wet rubber. I kept apologizing for bleeding on the seat until the paramedic told me kindly, firmly, to stop talking. Oxygen makes everything feel unreal. The city slid by outside the small rear windows, lights smeared by rain, and I tried to catalog details the way my therapist had taught me. Blue jacket, plastic clip, the sound of Velcro. It worked a little. At the hospital, they sat me in a curtained bay and ran cool water over my hand until the burn stopped screaming and settled into a deep, pulsing ache. 2nd degree, they said. Blisters intact. No surgery. I nodded like I understood. wrapped it carefully, and handed me paperwork and a prescription and a warning about infection. They asked me if I'd lost consciousness. I said no. They asked if I'd been dizzy. I said yes, but that it could have been the smoke or the stress or the way my body reacts when it thinks it's trapped. They wrote things down. They took my vitals twice. Ben sat in a chair by the curtain, blanket folded in his lap like he didn't trust it anymore. His knuckles were scraped. One of his wrists had started to swell. He kept flexing his fingers, checking that they worked. "I'm fine," he said for the third time when a nurse glanced at him. "I really am." They let him go before me. I watched him stand, a little stiff, and felt something close to panic that he might just leave. Instead, he waited by the wall, scrolling through his phone, stopping every few seconds to look up at the hallway like he was listening for something. When they finally discharged me, it was after midnight. The rain had picked up, heavier now, the kind that soaked your shoes in seconds. Ben held an umbrella over my head like it mattered. We didn't go back to the building. Management had sent a mass text while we were in the hospital. Building temporarily closed pending inspection. Please make alternate arrangements. It was written in the polite, bloodless language of liability. I stayed on Ben's couch that night. It smelled like laundry detergent and coffee. He gave me a t-shirt to sleep in and insisted on the couch himself, even when I told him it was ridiculous. "I don't mind," he said, "and you probably shouldn't be alone tonight." He didn't say because of what happened, but we both knew. Sleep came in pieces. I dreamed of ladders and vents and laughter that turned into coughing. I woke up every hour, checking the ceiling above me, then feeling foolish because there was nothing there but smooth plaster and a smoke detector that blinked green. In the morning, my phone buzzed with missed calls. My mother frantic. A number I didn't recognize, likely the police. An email from management with more words and still no answers. The police interview happened that afternoon in a quiet room that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. The officer was patient. He asked me to start from the beginning, and I did, right up until the point where everything became a series of reactions instead of choices. They had the man in custody, he said. Trespassing. Endangerment. He used other terms, heavier ones, and then softened them again. The man had been living rough, moving from roof to roof, using generators and extension cords when he could. Our building hadn't been the first. "Why the laughter?" I asked before I could stop myself. The officer paused. "Some people laugh when they're under stress," he said. "It's not joy, it's a release." I nodded, like that closed something. The building reopened 3 days later. Inspection passed. Vent repaired. New locks installed. A notice taped to the front door reminding residents not to prop exits open and to report suspicious activity. The word suspicious activity made my chest tighten. I went back during daylight. My apartment smelled stale, like a place that had been sealed too long. I opened every window and let the cool air rush through. The sauce pot was still in the sink, exactly where I'd left it, a thin skin dried on top. I threw it away without thinking. The ceiling looked the same. Smooth. Innocent. Management offered a rent credit. They apologized. They promised additional security. A new camera appeared in the basement the following week, its small red light steady and unblinking. Ben walked me up when I finally stayed overnight again. He lingered in the doorway, hands in his pockets. "You good?" he asked. "I think so," I said. It was true in the limited way truths sometimes are. "Thank you for everything," he shrugged. neighbors. After he left, I locked the door and stood there longer than usual, hand resting on the deadbolt, feeling its weight. I made tea. I sat on the couch. I let the quiet settle. The private fear didn't disappear. It never does, but it changed shape. It wasn't about missing signs anymore. It was about what happens after you see them, how you live in a place knowing how thin the barrier is between ordinary and dangerous. Weeks passed. Hand healed into a shiny patch of new skin that pulled when I stretched it too far. I went back to work. I processed claims about water damage and car accidents, and one carbon monoxide incident that made me stare at the screen until my supervisor asked if I needed a break. I started therapy again. I told my therapist the whole story, even the parts that made me feel foolish. She listened without interrupting. "What do you do when you hear something now?" she asked. "I listen," I said. "And then I check." "Both," she said, like that mattered. One evening, a month later, I was cooking again. Different sauce, different pot. The rain was light, barely there. I heard a sound from above me, a thump, a scrape. My body reacted before my brain did, heart racing, breath shallow. But then I waited, I counted. I noticed the rhythm. Footsteps, normal ones. Someone on the roof during a maintenance check, maybe. Or the raccoon again. I checked the building chat. A message from management. Roof work scheduled tonight. Noise expected. I exhaled. I finished cooking. I ate at the counter. I washed the dish and dried it and put it away. Later, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and let myself remember the laugh not as a threat, but as a fact. A sound a human made under pressure. The building creaked. Pipes ticked. The city hummed. Almost ordinary. I slept. And that's the end of today's chilling tale. If you enjoyed this story and want more nights full of suspense, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and turn on the bell so you never miss a scare. I've got plenty more stories waiting for you, so stick around and check out the other videos on the channel. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay safe and don't look behind you.